Good morning, BSED Math Tutu. This is the last topic and the last module that we will discuss to you today. The future of food and agriculture, the trends and challenges. Let me read first our learning objectives. At the end of the lesson, the students are expected to first identify future food and agriculture trends and challenges, distinguish steps to help us achieve a more sustainable agriculture and food system, and lastly, you were able to perform a speech choir about the importance of achieving a more sustainable agriculture and food system. From hunting and gathering to modern-day food, agriculture and fisheries value chains, fears that food production cannot keep up with population growth have preoccupied mankind. Thomas Malthus, in his famous essay on the principle of population, predicted mass starvation that would only be corrected by war and pestilence, thus reducing the population to a more manageable size. Mankind's future ability to feed itself is in jeopardy due to intensifying pressures on natural resources, mounting inequality in the fallout from a changing climate. So, according to Malthus, population increase in geometric progression, while food production increase in arithmetic progression. So, for him, the only way to reduce the population was through catastrophic events such as disease, starvation, misery, and wars. So, that is what Malthus stated to reduce the population. Climate change will affect every aspect of food production. The report says this includes greater variability of precipitation and increases in the frequency of droughts and floods. Almost one-half of the forests that once covered the earth are now gone. Groundwater sources are being depleted rapidly. Biodiversity has been deeply eroded. So climate change is one of the main problem of the farmers now, why the food production is changing rapidly. So how does climate change affect the food production? So simply kanang more extreme weather can harm livestock and crops, such as major storms have always devastated farms, whether from damaging winds during a storm, erosion, and landslide. Another way that affects the food production is the water scarcity. So, kung way tubig, manggahi ang mga soil niya atong mga tanom, mga matay. That's why climate change affect every aspect of the food production. By 2050, humanity ranks will likely have grown to nearly 10 billion people. In a scenario with moderate economic growth, this population increase will push up global demand for the agricultural products by 50% over present levels, projects the future of food and agriculture, anticipating by 2050, humanity's ranks will likely have grown to nearly 10 billion people in a scenario with moderate economic growth. This population increase will push up global demand for agricultural products by 50% over present level projects, the future of food and agriculture, anticipating pressures on already strained natural resources. At the same time, greater numbers of people will be eating fewer cereals and larger amounts of meat, fruits, vegetables, and processed food, a result of an ongoing global dietary transition that will further add to those pressures, driving more deforestation, land degradation, and greenhouse gas emissions. While in general, the world population growth is slowing down. So, nag-slow down ang world population growth. In some regions, population will continue to expand well beyond 2050 and even in the next century. So magkaanam og kadako ang atong population. More people now live in cities than in rural areas. And this discrepancy is projected to increase as population grows. So, as people are now living in the cities, magkaanam gyud og kadako ang population. Urbanization has been accompanied by a transition in dietary patterns and has had great impacts on food system. As a whole, the world population is growing older. Aging is now also the accelerating in low-income countries. As a whole, the world population is growing older. Aging is now also accelerating in low-income countries, where the process tends to start earlier and is becoming more pronounced in rural areas. Urbanization and aging will have important repercussions on the agricultural labor force and the socio-economic fabric of rural community. These population dynamics must be taken into account when charting sustainable development pathways that can assure food security for all. Next is the trends. A number of global trends are influencing food security, poverty, and the overall sustainability of food and agricultural system. First is economic growth and population dynamics are driving the structural change of economies. So the decline in the share of agriculture in total production and employment is taking place at different speeds and poses different challenges across regions. Although agricultural investment and technological innovations are boosting productivity, the growth of yields has slowed to rates that are too low for comfort. Food losses and waste claim a significant proportion of agricultural output, and reducing them would lessen the need for production increases. However, the needed acceleration in productivity growth is hampered by the degradation of natural resources, the loss of biodiversity, and the spread of transboundary pests and diseases of plants and animals, some of which are becoming resistant to antimicrobials. Second, climate change affects disproportionately food insecure regions, jeopardizing crop and livestock production, fish stocks, and fisheries. So, as what I have said, climate change affects the food production. Especially now, our weather is mukalit ra og ulan, init. Unya, maka-affect man na sa to ang mga tanom kay kung grabe og ulan, makakos siya og baha. Unya, kung grabe sad og init is mga matay ang atong tanom, unya mga uga ang mga yuta, nya magsige siya glutak-lutak. That's why climate change can affect the food production. Next is hunger and extreme poverty have been reduced globally since the 1990s. So, yet around 700 people, most of them living in rural areas, are still extremely poor today. So, kung katong puyo gihapon sa rural areas is kanang nagpabilin gihapon nga pobre hantud karon. In addition, despite undeniable progress in reducing rates of undernourishment and improving levels of nutrition and health, almost 800 people are chronically hungry and 2 people suffer micronutrient deficiencies. So daghan gihapon ang suffer og hungerness. Next, critical parts of food system are becoming more capital intensive vertically integrated and concentrated in fewer hands. So, this is happening from input provisioning to food distribution. Small-scale producers and landless households are the first to lose out and increasingly seek employment opportunities outside of agriculture. So, this is increasing through migratory flows, especially of male members of rural households, which is leading in turn to the feminization of farming in many parts of the world. And lastly, conflicts, crises, and natural disasters are increasing in number and intensity. So, through these trends, they reduce food availability, disrupt access to food and healthcare, and undermine social protection system, pushing many affected people back into poverty and hunger, fueling stress, migration, and increase the need for humanitarian aid. Violent conflict also frequently characterize productive crisis. On average, the proportion of undernourished people living in low-income countries with a protracted crisis is between 2.5 and 3 times higher than in other low-income countries. And now let us proceed to the challenges. High input resource intensive farming systems, which have caused massive deforestation, water scarcity, soil depletion, and high levels of greenhouse gas emissions, cannot deliver sustainable food and agriculture production. With this challenge, it needed our innovative system that protect and enhance the natural resources base while increasing productivity. Needed is a transformative process towards holistic approaches as agroecology, agroforestry, climate smart agriculture, and conservation agriculture will also build upon indigenous and traditional knowledge. Through technological improvements along with drastic cuts in economy in a worldwide and agricultural fossil fuel use would help address climate change and the intensification of natural hazards, which affect all ecosystems and even aspects of the human life. Greater international collaboration is needed to prevent emerging transboundary agriculture and food system threats such as pests and disease. So, mitigating extreme poverty and ensuring that vulnerable people who escape poverty do not fall back into it requires action to reduce inequalities. That means addressing inequalities both between and within countries, in levels of income, in opportunities, and in ownership of assets, including the land. Pro-poor growth strategies, which ensure that the weakest participate in the benefits of market integration and investment in culture, will improve their income and investment opportunities in rural areas and address the root causes of migration. Third, but pro-poor growth must go beyond agriculture by involving both rural and urban areas and supporting job creation and income diversification. Social protection are combined with pro-poor growth because it will help meet the challenge of it will help to meet the challenge of ending hunger and addressing the triple burden of malnutrition through healthier diets. Permanently eliminating hunger, malnutrition, and extreme poverty also requires building resilience to protracted crises, disasters, and conflicts, and preventing conflicts by promoting inclusive and equitable global development. Fourth, a rethinking of food system and governance is essential for meeting current and future challenges. It means it is vertically coordinated. um, more organized food systems offer standardized food for urban areas and formal employment opportunities, but they need to be accompanied by responsible investments and concern for smallholder livelihoods. The environmental footprint of lengthening food supply chains and impacts on biodiversity. These concerns needed to be addressed by making food system more efficient, inclusive, and resilient. And lastly, on the path of sustainable development, all countries are interdependent. And one of the greatest challenges is achieving coherent, effective national and international governance with clear development objectives and commitment to achieving them. So, the 2030 agenda for sustainable development such a vision, one that goes beyond the divide of developed and developing countries. Sustainable development is a universal challenge and a collective responsibility for all countries, requiring fundamental changes in way all societies produce and consume.
So there are four SDGs that was addressed in this topic. First is the goal 1 of the Sustainable Development Goals, end poverty in all its forms and everywhere. By having a sustainable food and agriculture gives us food security. It can ensure a consistent and reliable food supply, which is essential for eradicating poverty. By implementing sustainable farming practices, we can enhance crop yields, improve access to nutritious food, and reduce the vulnerability of communities to food shortages and price fluctuations. This, in turn, helps alleviate hunger and poverty. So next, livelihoods and income generation. Sustainable agriculture provides opportunities for rural communities to generate income and improve their livelihoods. By promoting environmentally friendly farming methods, diversifying agricultural activities, and supporting small-scale farmers, sustainable agriculture can create jobs, enhance productivity, and contribute to local economic development. Sustainable agriculture is very important to achieve a sustainable development. Kay kung magamit ang sustainable agriculture, makasure ta nga naay pagkaon and also makahatag tag oportunidad sa tanan. At the same time, we can protect our environment. Okay, so goal 2. End hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. To feed the growing global population, estimates suggest we'll have to increase food production by as much as 68% by 2050. And that's not the only challenge. There's also the fact that the middle class population is growing, which generally brings with it increased demand for meat over grains, legumes, and wheat. Sustainable agriculture practices contribute to food security by ensuring a consistent and sufficient food supply. It also focuses not only on quantity but also it focuses the quality of food production. It emphasizes diverse and nutritious crops, agroecological approaches, and reduce reliance on synthetic inputs. It also sustainable food and agriculture is essential for building resilience to climate change impacts. So, it is important to support sustainable food and agriculture because di lang ni makatabang sa atong kaagalingon but makahatag ni og positive effect in our environments and our community in which we live in. Next goal is the goal 15. Protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems. Sustainably manage forests, combat desertification and health, and reverse land degradation, and halt biodiversity loss. So sustainable agriculture has good practices such as enhancing soil fertility and protect against land degradation and desertification. These practices ensures that long-term productivity of agricultural land while minimizing environmental damage. Sustainable food and agriculture also practices to promote biodiversity conservation by protecting and restoring ecosystems. By preserving biodiversity, we ensure the health and resilience of ecosystems, including forests, wetlands, and other natural habitats. Another goal is the Goal 17. Strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. Governments have an important role to play to ensure that its policies, institutions, and infrastructure are fit for purpose, providing the enabling environment for the sector to be increasingly productive, sustainable, resilient, and responsive to consumer demand. Okay, so 'di ba ang government mao'y mo support sa agriculture sa usa ka community. 'Di ba mag-conduct na sila seminars for agriculture nga kanang maghatag sila og strategies and kanang new bitaw nga kanang pamaagi sa pagbuhat og agriculture. And also they provide seeds and fertilizer. 'Di ba kabantay mo sa inyong community maghatag ang government og libre nga fertilizer and also seeds to improve your agriculture. Okay, so sustainable food and agriculture emphasize the importance of knowledge transfer, technology dissemination, capacity building to support sustainable development. In the context of food and agriculture, this involves sharing best practices, innovations, and scientific research across countries and regions. Strengthening the capacity of farmers, agricultural institutions, and local communities is crucial for adapting sustainable farming methods and managing natural resources effectively. So in summary, sustainable food and agriculture are vital for achieving such goals in Sustainable Development Goals. By conserving biodiversity, preventing land degradation, ensuring food security, and also promoting improved nutrition. Okay, so there are two broad trends that will revolutionize our food system. First, reimagining farming methods. Embracing new farming methods could help the agriculture industry reduce its environmental impact while still increasing productivity. While previous evolutions in farming have largely been driven by mechanical improvements, namely bigger and better machinery, or genetic advances, better seed, more effective fertilizers, and etc. The next big transformation is being driven by digital tools. So, the reimagining of farming methods is driven by the need to increase food production to meet the demands of a growing global population, mitigate the effects of climate change, reduce the environmental impact of agriculture, and improve livelihoods of farmers. By embracing these innovative approaches, the agricultural industry can become more sustainable, resilient, and capable of feeding the world while preserving natural resources for future generation. Okay, so example of digital tools is the automation. So, including the use of robots, drones, and autonomous tractors to make more efficient. Okay, so kanang mas mapadali ang atong agriculture, no, so maka-produce tag more crops because we are using machines. Dili na manual ang atong pagbuhat sa farming. Nanatay mga machines which can be used in planting, harvesting, and other activities in agriculture. Another is the precision farming, which involves applying irrigation, fertilizers, and pesticides at variable rates depending on the needs of crops rather than uniformly applying them at set times, quantities, and frequencies. Okay, so by the use of this method, mas mapadali bitaw ang atong trabaho in farming. It's because it involves the use of advanced technologies such as GPS, sensors, drones, and satellite imagery to gather real-time data about soil conditions, crop health, and weather patterns. So this data is then used to make informed decisions about irrigation, fertilization, and pest control. So it enables farmers to optimize resource use and maximize yields while minimizing cost. Other key trends to watch in farming methods include more localized urban farming, producing food closer to the people who need it, thereby reducing food mass. So, example is vertical farming. The practice of growing crops in vertical layers and hydroponics, growing plants in nutrient-rich water, are both methods that generally use less water, soil, and space than traditional field farming methods. So, vertical farming is an indoor farming method that involves growing crops in vertically stacked layers of rocks. Often in urban areas or controlled environments, this approach utilizes artificial lighting and climate control. So, example aning vertical farming is the Aero Farm sa New York. So, makita na to dito no nga layer by layer ang plants, which is kanang gamay rag soil nga magamit. And also gamay ra sad og space compare sa traditional farming. It's because kay gamay ra magland nga makonsume kay layer by layer man sila. So, and also less sad og water ang ilang magamit. So another good factors in air farms is they uses zero pesticides and harmful chemicals. So nutritious jud ni nga mga plants nga ilang gihimo adto because walay chemicals, so organic tanan. And also 95% less water. Another trend is finding new ways to create food, especially meat. So this is where cultured, lab-grown, and plant-based meats come into play. Starting with plant-based meats, it's clear that the market for meat alternatives is thriving. Chains like Burger King are routinely stocking plant-based burgers, and plant-based pioneers Beyond Meat became one of the most successful IPOs in history after going public at $1.5 billion and being valued at $13 billion less than 3 months later. Okay, so this trend of finding new ways to create food, especially meat, reflects a growing awareness of the environmental, ethical, and health challenges associated with meat production. As technology continues to advance and more research is conducted, we can expect further developments in the field of alternative meat production, offering consumers a wider range of sustainable and ethical food choices. So, example of meat alternative is the lab-grown meats, or also known as cellular agriculture. It involves growing meat from animal cells in a laboratory rather than raising and slaughtering whole animals. So the process typically starts with a small sample of animal cells which are cultivated in a nutrient-rich environment to allow them multiply and form a muscle tissue. So it offers several potential advantages over traditional meat production. It requires fewer resources such as land, water, and feed, and produces lower greenhouse gas emissions. It also eliminates the need for large-scale animal farming, which can lead to deforestation, habitat loss, and water pollution. Next is the plant-based meat. So these are typically made from a combination of plant proteins such as soy or peas, along with other ingredients to enhance flavor, texture, and juiciness.
Localizing food and agriculture, Philippine setting. Modernizing the country's agricultural sector is a very important agenda for the Philippines, based on World Bank Country Director Brunei, Malaysia, Thailand, and the Philippines. Transforming Philippine agriculture into a dynamic, high-growth sector is essential for the country to speed up recovery, poverty reduction, and inclusive growth. Agriculture Secretary William Dar's vision is a food-secure and resilient Philippines with prosperous farmers and fisherfolk. The World Bank's report, Transforming Philippine Agriculture During COVID-19 and Beyond, states that transforming the country's farming and food systems is even more important during the pandemic to ensure strong food value chains, affordable and nutritious food, and a vibrant rural economy. The World Bank report suggests shifting away from a focus on specific crops to improving the overall resilience, competitiveness, and sustainability for the rural sector. Government support can help overcome market failure by bringing together buyers and producer organizations and providing support for the preparation and implementation of profitable business plans. Projects are in the pipeline to help raise agricultural productivity, resiliency, and access to markets. So there are 5 steps that help achieve a sustainable agriculture. The step 1 is freeze agriculture's footprint. Agriculture has caused the loss of ecosystems around the globe, and tropical forests are being cleared at alarming rates. Because for most of history, whenever we've needed to produce more food, we've simply cut down forests or plowed grasslands to make more farms. So this is not beneficial to the 850 million people still hungry and must be avoided to ensure food security. So the second step is grow more on farms we've got. So the Green Revolution in the 1960s increased yields in Asia and Latin America, but with major environmental costs. Now, the world can focus on increasing yields on less productive farmlands, such as in Africa, Latin America, and Eastern Europe, using high-tech, precision farming systems and organic farming approaches. This could boost yields in these places several times over, so we can be more efficient about where we grow, what we grow, and how we grow. So the fourth step is shift diets. So it would be far easier to feed 9 billion people by 2050 if more of the crops we grew ended up in human stomachs. So today, only 55% of the world's crop calories feed people directly. The rest are fed to livestock, about 36%, or turned into biofuels and industrial products, roughly 9%. Though many of us consume meat, dairy, and eggs from animals raised on feedlots, Only a fraction of the calories in feed given to livestock make their way into the meat and milk that we consume. Finding more efficient ways to grow meat and shifting to less meat-intensive diets, even just switching from grain-fed beef to meats like chicken, pork, or pasture-raised beef could free up substantial amounts of food across the world. So the fourth step is shift diets. So it would be far easier to feed 9 billion people by 2050 if more of the crops we grew ended up in human stomachs. So today, only 55% of the world's crop calories feed people directly. The rest are fed to livestock, about 36%, or turned into biofuels and industrial products, roughly 9%. Though many of us consume meat, dairy, and eggs from animals raised on feedlots, only a fraction of the calories in feed given to livestock make their way into the meat and milk that we consume. Finding more efficient ways to grow meat and shifting to less meat-intensive diets, even just switching from grain-fed beef to meats like chicken, pork, or pasture-raised beef could free up substantial amounts of food across the world. So the last step, which is the step 5, is reduce waste. So an estimated 25% of the world's food calories and up to 50% of total food weight are lost or wasted before they can be consumed. So consumers in the developed world can reduce waste by serving smaller portions, eating leftovers, and encouraging cafeterias, restaurants, and supermarkets to develop waste-reducing measures. This is one of the most effective options for boosting food availability. So I can conclude that taken together, these 5 steps could more than double the world's food supplies and dramatically cut the environmental impact of agriculture worldwide. But it won't be easy. These solutions require a big shift in thinking. For most of our history, we have been blinded by the overzealous imperative of more in agriculture, clearing more land, growing more crops, using more resources. We need to find a balance between producing more food and sustaining the planet for future generations.
And concerns on food and agriculture. Food insecurity. It refers to the lack of secure access to sufficient amounts of safe and nutritious food for normal human growth and development and an active and healthy life. So when we say food insecurity, it occurs when individuals or households do not have reliable, consistent access to enough food to meet their basic needs. This can happen for a variety of reasons, including poverty, unemployment, low wages, and lack of access to affordable and nutritious food options. To address food insecurity, policies and programs that increase access to affordable and nutritious food, such as food assistance programs and community gardens, are important. Additionally, addressing underlying issues such as poverty and income inequality can help alleviate food insecurity in the long term. Next, we have acute food insecurity. It is any manifestation of food insecurity at a specific point in time that is of severity that threatens lives, livelihoods, or both, regardless of the causes, context, or duration. Acute food insecurity, so it refers to a situation where people do not have access to enough food to meet their basic needs and are at risk of starvation or other life-threatening conditions. This can be due to a range of factors such as conflict, natural disasters, economic shocks, or social disruptions. The severity of the situation is such that it poses an immediate threat to people's lives and livelihoods. So it is important to address acute food insecurity quickly through immediate food aid and longer-term measures such as improving access to food, strengthening agricultural production, and supporting livelihood. Food crisis occurs when rates of acute food insecurity and malnutrition rise sharply at local or national levels, raising the need for emergency food assistance. So food crisis happens when there is a sudden increase in acute food insecurity and malnutrition at either local or national levels, prompting the need for immediate food assistance. This could be caused by different factors ranging from natural disaster, conflicts, economic instability, and other unexpected events that could disrupt food production and supply chains, making food inaccessible or unaffordable for people. The crisis could lead to hunger, starvation, and even death, especially for vulnerable groups such as children, pregnant women, and the elderly. So the government and humanitarian organizations often respond to food crisis by providing emergency food assistance, ensuring access to safe water and sanitation, and implementing long-term solutions to improve food security and resilience to future crises. Next, we have chronic food insecurity. So it refers to food insecurity that persists over time, largely due to structural causes. The definition includes seasonal food insecurity that occurs during periods with non-exceptional conditions. So it has relevance in providing strategic guidance to actions that focus on the medium and improvement of the quality and quantity of food consumption for an active and healthy life. So when we say chronic food insecurity, it is often linked to poverty and the limited availability of resources such as land, water, and infrastructure that are necessary for food production and distribution. So strategies to address chronic food insecurity often involve a combination of short-term interventions such as food aid and social safety nets and longer-term efforts to promote sustainable agriculture, improve infrastructure, and strengthen social protection systems. Severe food insecurity refers to the level of severity of food insecurity in which people have likely run out of food, experienced hunger, and at the most extreme gone for days without eating, putting their health into grave risk. So, severe food insecurity is the most severe and acute form of food insecurity. It is a state of hunger resulting from a combination of factors including inadequate food availability, lack of access to food, and insufficient resources to purchase or acquire food. People experiencing severe food insecurity may skip meals, reduce the quality and quantity of the food they ate, or go without food for days at a time. So, efforts to address severe food insecurity requires a multi-phased approach including increasing food availability and access, improving social and economic policies, and providing targeted assistance to vulnerable populations. By addressing the root causes of severe food insecurity, we can work to ensure that all individuals have access to food they need to thrive. Next, we have malnutrition. in all its forms includes undernutrition or wasting, stunting or underweight, inadequate vitamins or minerals, overweight, obesity, and resulting diet-related non-communicable diseases. So malnutrition refers to a condition in which the body is not getting enough of the nutrients it needs to function properly. This can take many forms including undernutrition, characterized by wasting, stunting, or being underweight. So inadequate intake of vitamins or minerals, being overweight or obese, and developing diet-related non-communicable diseases such as heart disease or diabetes. Malnutrition can affect people of all ages and can result from a variety of factors such as poverty, lack of access to nutritious food, and poor education or health care. Undernutrition. It is a consequence of inadequate nutrient intake and or absorption and or illness or disease. So undernutrition occurs when an individual's diet does not provide adequate amounts of essential nutrients such as proteins, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, and minerals, or when the body fails to properly absorb these nutrients. This may occur due to poverty, lack of access to food, or poor dietary choices. Additionally, illnesses or diseases such as cancer, HIV or AIDS, and digestive disorders can also interfere with nutrient absorption, leading to undernutrition. Overall, undernutrition can have serious consequences on an individual's growth, development, and overall health. This includes interstate and intrastate conflicts, internal violence, banditry, and criminality, civil unrest or political crisis, often leading to population displacements and or disruptions of livelihoods and food system. It is a key driver of acute food insecurity because in conflict situations, civilians are frequently deprived of their income sources. The food system and markets are disrupted, pushing up food prices and sometimes leading to scarcity of water and fuel or food itself. So conflict and insecurity refers to a wide range of situations in which violence, unrest, or social and political instability undermine people's ability to live their lives and access basic resources such as food and water. So these situations can be caused by a variety of factors such as political turmoil, economic inequality, ethnic or religious tensions, or external threats such as war or terrorism. When people are forced to flee their homes or when food production and distribution systems are disrupted, it can lead to major food shortage and widespread hunger. Conflict and insecurity are therefore major drivers of acute food insecurity, which is a serious global challenge affecting millions of people around the world. So in 2021, conflict escalated or persisted in many major crises, displacing people from their homes and livelihoods, destroying critical infrastructure and markets, and disrupting trade. At the same time, economies worldwide strove to recover from the damaging consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, which left many people struggling to regain employment and reestablish businesses against the backdrop of ongoing macroeconomic challenges in many food crisis countries or territories. So in 2021, many conflicts continued to cause displacements and destruction, while the COVID-19 pandemic also had a negative impact on the economies worldwide. Conflict makes it difficult for businesses to operate, which has negative implications for employment and the economy as a whole. So in addition, agriculture is often destroyed by landmines and other explosives, which contributes to food insecurity and economic instability in affected countries. Conflict prevents businesses from operating and weakens the national economy, reducing employment opportunities, increasing poverty levels, and diverting government spending towards the war effort. So landmines, explosive remnants of war, and improvised explosive devices often destroy agricultural land, mills, storage facilities, machinery, and etc. So, if a country's food insecurity is caused by a conflict or insecurity, it may take a long time to recover. Therefore, it is important to consider changing the primary cause of the insecurity if other factors become more significant. So, if the analysis focuses on displaced populations, the main cause of the displacement should be taken into account. Weather extremes. These include droughts, floods, dry spells, storms, cyclones, hurricanes, typhoons, and the untimely start of rainy season. Weather extremes drive food insecurity by directly affecting crops and or livestock, cutting off roads and preventing markets from being stocked. So, when we say weather extremes such as droughts, storms, and floods, it can lead to food insecurity by damaging crops and livestock and disrupting markets. Small-scale farmers and pastoralists are especially vulnerable to these events and may struggle to cope and recover from their impacts due to their dependency on agriculture and livestock rearing. Disease outbreak. Disease outbreaks is the occurrence of disease cases in excess of normal expectancy are usually caused by an infection transmitted through person-to-person contact, animal-to-person contact, or from the environment or other media. Water, sanitation, food, and air quality are vital elements in the transmission of communicable diseases and in the spread of diseases prone to cause epidemics. Disease outbreak happens when there are more cases of a particular illness than expected. They are usually caused by infections that are spread from person to person, animal to person, or through the environment. So clean water, good sanitation, safe food, and air quality are all important in preventing the spread of these diseases. Crops, pests, and animal diseases. Transboundary plant pests and diseases can easily spread to several countries and reach epidemic proportions. Outbreaks and upsurges can cause huge losses to crops and pastures, threatening the livelihoods of vulnerable farmers and the food and nutrition security of millions at a time. Crop pests such as fall armyworms and desert locusts can damage crops and may lead to severe production shortfalls. So disease and pests that affect crops and animals can easily spread across borders and become epidemics. When these outbreaks occur, they can cause significant losses to crops and pastures, endangering the food and income security of farmers and potentially millions of people. Certain pests like fall armyworms and desert locusts can cause extensive damage to crops and lead to serious production deficits. Next, we have desert locusts that are the most destructive locust species. So locust worms can be dense and highly mobile and can fly as much as 150 kilometers a day, given favorable winds. They migrate across continents and are a potential threat to the livelihoods of 1/10 of the world's population. This pest is a serious menace to agricultural production in Africa, the Near East, and Southwest Asia. The locust can eat its own way about 2 grams in plants every day. That means 1 million locusts can eat about 1 ton of food each day, and the largest swarms can consume over 100,000 to tens of thousands of people for 1 year. Desert locusts are a very destructive species of locust that can fly long distances and can be a serious threat to the livelihoods of many people. They are found in several regions and can eat large amounts of plants, which can be detrimental to agricultural production. Swarms of locusts can consume large quantities of food each day, which is enough to feed a significant number of people for a year. So, for your activity, on a 1/2 sheet of paper, crosswise, cite at least 5 practices or ways to achieve a more sustainable food system. Again, for your activity, on a 1/2 sheet of paper, crosswise, cite at least 5 practices or ways to achieve a more sustainable food system. So, before ending our report, I will give you this quote. Investments in agriculture are the best weapons against hunger and poverty, and they have made life better for millions of people. That would be all. Thank you for listening, and God bless everyone.